feeling inside? From boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where we need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations, because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. And they could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and... Irritating?
It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primer stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead. Actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
Very good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo alongside Emma Webb, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Great to have your company this morning, and do we have an action-packed show coming up for you?
We do indeed. All of the day's top stories with broadcaster Esther Stanhope and writer and podcaster Lewis Oakley.
Super Saturday with the results of the mayoral elections in the West Midlands, London, Greater Manchester and other regions to announce we're asking if the Tories could pick up some momentum after a bleak set of results yesterday.
Yeah, that big result coming at 2 o'clock with Sadiq Khan. Elsewhere, is it time to ditch the university books and go the apprenticeship route? More and more young people certainly think so. We'll be debating that later this hour.
And we will be welcoming our greatest Briton to the show following his groundbreaking 2022 climb to Everest Base Camp. He's now going to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. Ain't no mountain high enough.
And I don't know about you guys at home or you, Emma, but I'm dubbing today Super Saturday because the results of the London mayoral elections, Sadiq Khan against Susan Hall, are announced around about 2 o'clock. And at the moment, the rumours are, the whispers are, that Sadiq Khan is under big pressure, so all eyes on that.
Everything to play for. It's going to be very unpredictable.
Yeah, but let us know what you think. Is Sadiq under pressure? Do you want him back in office? I don't think many of you would, but I think there's probably some of you who don't mind him that much. And also other results from the local elections yesterday coming through as well. But before all that, here's your news headlines with Ray.
Thanks, guys. 1 minute past 10, our top stories. The Prime Minister faces another challenging day after losing hundreds of councillors in the local elections. With 102 of 107 councils declared, the Conservatives have suffered huge losses, including control of 10 councils. Labour made major gains, with the Lib Dems and the Greens also doing well. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Ellie Reeves is Labour's Deputy National Campaign Coordinator. She's told us it's a good start, but more still needs to be done.
Look, I think we're pleased but not complacent. There are a large number of battleground seats that we need to win at the general election to form a government. Places like Bolsover, Mansfield, South Derbyshire, the seats that we need to win. So that's why winning in the East Midlands is a really good indicator of the mood and where things are going.
Well, Andrew Griffiths is Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology. He told us the public don't really want Labour's policies.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult set of results. I think that was what was expected going in. There's going to be a very simple choice at the next election. Who walks through number 10 Downing Street? Is it Rishi Sunak with his plan that's starting to work now? Or is it Keir with no plan, or where they do have plans that don't really go with the grain of what the British people want?
The result of 7 mayoral contests will be announced today, including London and the West Midlands. The battle between London Mayor Sadiq Khan and Tory challenger Susan Hall is thought to be closer than expected. The count started at 9 a.m. this morning, and we could have an indication who's won by early afternoon. Meanwhile, a narrow contest is also likely for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Liverpool City Region, South Yorkshire and Salford will also declare today. We'll also hear results from 8 of 10 elections for police and crime commissioners. Boris Johnson has thanked polling staff who refused to let him vote without ID. The former Prime Minister was turned away from a polling station on Thursday after he forgot valid identification. Writing in the Daily Mail, Mr Johnson said the 3 villagers were right to stick to the rules. He came back later with his driving licence. The requirement to provide photo ID was introduced by Mr Johnson when he occupied number 10. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into Sunday. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. Motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million will take to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean that local routes could see heavy traffic. Also, train strikes between Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier. Fuel prices have gone up by an average of 10 pence per litre so far this year. New figures show that the typical price for a litre of petrol reached £1.50 in April, whilst diesel came close to £1.58. The rising prices have added around £5.50 to the cost of filling a typical family car. The RAC is calling on the Competition and Markets Authority to crack down on retailers over unfair margins. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Ben and Emma.
Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. I think it's going to be a good day today, Emma, because the sun is trying its hardest to peek out in London and the South East anyway. Not sure about where you are. And, yeah, I'm feeling good.
But it hasn't been a good day for you, though, has it, Ben?
No.
Good 24 hours.
It's been a bit of a strange 24 hours. I got scammed on Twitter last night trying to buy Arsenal tickets. So I lost 160 quid sending it to some random. My fault. admittedly. And then this morning, I was getting off the train to come to this shift, and my watch slipped off and fell down the train tracks. And they had to stop all the trains for 10 minutes, red signals everywhere, just so they could retrieve my watch. So there we go.
So will the third bad thing to happen to you be something to do with these electoral results?
Well, either I'm going to faint on air today, and you're going to have to pick up the mantle, or Sadiq Khan is going to win London and he's going to beat Susan Hall, the results of which are in at 2 o'clock.
I'd rather you fainted.
Oh, thank you. Cheers. Good start. All right.
Well, there's that.
Yeah. Well, look, there is only one place to start the show, and it's, of course, those local election results. It was a bleak day for Rishi Sunak yesterday, but could the Tories see their fortunes turn around today with those mayoral election results announced in London, Greater Manchester and the West Midlands?
Well, let's pose that question to GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's outside City Hall. Thank you for joining us, Olivia. So this is really quite a complex election, isn't it? There are lots of unknown and unpredictable factors.
Absolutely, Emma. I mean, there are all sorts of unknown unknowns which could affect this election result. Sadiq Khan was very much the favourite going into this contest. He was, at some points, 22 points ahead in the polls. If he were to win, it would be an unprecedented third-term victory for him. But whispers started last night that perhaps the contest could be much, much closer than was being predicted. Now, why is that? Well, there are a number of factors at play. One of them is what is going to happen to the Muslim vote. The Muslim vote is a big demographic in London and the surrounding areas. And although Sadiq Khan has called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, something which most Muslim voters are in favour of, the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, has taken a completely different stance and has defended Israel's right to defend itself. Now, what will Labour voters in London make of that? Will they choose to stay at home, Muslim natural Labour voters, because they don't like what Keir Starmer has said? Or will they understand the difference between Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan and go out and vote for Sadiq Khan anyway? As yet, we just don't know who will win out, Sadiq Khan or Keir Starmer. That could be a huge factor. Another factor is reform. As we saw yesterday in the Blackpool South by-election, reform is beginning to see the dividends of its high polling. And Howard Cox, the reform candidate in London, is hopeful that he might be able to split the Tory vote. If that is the case, then of course we could see Sadiq Khan fly to the kind of victory that everyone was predicting. That said, usually in the London mayoral race, it is very, very much a two-horse affair. And it could be that natural reform voters, who are on the whole often to the right of the Conservative Party, decide that Susan Hall, who is definitely on the right of the Conservative Party, is the candidate for them. If that's the case, then of course we could be in for a shock Susan Hall victory. The other factor at play is what happens to the Lib Dem vote. Normally, in London, the Lib Dems don't really stand a chance of winning the mayoralty, but what Lib Dem voters do is put the Lib Dems first and Labour, usually, Sadiq Khan, in second place. This time round, it's a whole different voting system and there will be no second preference votes. Last time, Sadiq Khan did very well on second preferences. If that Lib Dem second preference vote completely collapses, and if the Lib Dems move in other directions rather than voting for Labour, on the whole, the Lib Dems aren't big fans of Sadiq Khan, then again, we could be looking at a surprise Susan Hall victory. So far, all we know is turnout. Turnout is around 40%, which is pretty low. Susan Hall's team, the Conservative team, say that low turnout is good for their candidate. And what's more, it looks as though turnout has been higher in the donut areas, the outer areas of London, like Bromley, Bexley, Dagenham, places which on the whole tend to sway Conservative, places which really hate ULEZ. And on the inner bits of London, in Camden, in Hammersmith, in the city, turnout has been really low, in some places as low as 19, 20%. Those are places which naturally support Sadiq Khan. So again, that's got Labour feeling pretty jittery. The sentiment here on the ground is that Sadiq Khan will probably just about win, but it could be much, much closer than anyone is predicting.
Excellent. Olivia Utley, top-tier analysis. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back with you during the show. Maybe Made me laugh when Olivia said the Reformer to the right of the Conservative Party. I was thinking in my head, well, it doesn't take much to be to the right of the Conservative Party.
Probably some people in the Labour Party were to the right of the Conservative Party, but anyway.
We're delighted to be joined now by broadcaster Esther Stanhope and writer and podcaster Lewis Oakley. Very good morning to you both.
Good morning.
What's your take then? Are you as excited as I am about the London mayoral results later this afternoon?
I think you should temper that excitement because I almost think Sadiq Khan winning has always been sort of a done deal, polling sort of 20 to 30%. He's gonna take it, and now all of a sudden, whilst we're waiting to count, it's like, oh, from the Labour side, you know, we might lose it. We might lose it, and I almost think it's just so that they can deliver that sucker punch later on today, where it's like, well, of course we won. I think it was almost such a done deal that they're now trying to float this rumour that, oh well, maybe it's not so close.
Oh, you don't never say never though.
The turnout figures are quite interesting in the outer boroughs, aren't they?
Yeah, so I live in Shoreditch, which is right by the City of London. It was my daughter's first experience of voting, and she was like, I don't know what to vote for. We had this awful pamphlet where everyone looks awful, including Sadiq Khan. Nobody is interesting in the pamphlet. Nobody's really exciting. I'm not really excited by anybody. I said, look, you can't waste your vote. You've got to come and vote. So we went to the polling station in Commercial Street. It was dead as a dodo. I mean, there's hardly anyone in there. I was really surprised, actually. It was the evening, but I was thinking, where are all the people? So she got overwhelmed by the ballot papers because you have the pink and the, what was it, pink, green, whatever. And she said, there were so many people. Anyway, so she ended up voting for the animal welfare because it was the first one on the page. So I'm thinking in London, animal welfare. You know, they're going to get a lot of votes, I think.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that Olivia was saying on the channel earlier that in that donut area, it's up, it's around 40%. The turnout is much, much better. And obviously those are the areas that are very ULEZ sceptic because they're less sort of London and a bit more countryside. People, lots of tradespeople working out there that are very affected by ULEZ. So it'd be interesting to see whether that disaffection, because I mean, I voted within the donut.
You were the donut, were you? Donut voter.
And there did seem to be a lot of people out, and everybody was very, very anti-Sadiq Khan.
Really? Well, I was in the jammy area, and there was no interest, really.
I think that'll be the thing. I think that the anti-Sadiq Khan, which I think so many Londoners now are like, we can't stand him, he's too arrogant, he's ruined it with ULEZ, not tough on crime, so many problems. But I think the problem is, who could people go for? And I'm on a few WhatsApp groups with people that kind of do this sort of thing, and it was interesting to see how split all of they were, and they didn't know what to do. And some people saying, hold your nose and vote for Susan, and then other people, I just can't do it. So I wonder how that's going to play out. I think a lot of Londoners can agree we don't like Sadiq Khan, but who should take that? I mean, maybe it should be animal welfare.
Do you think
they're not very interesting candidates, I'm afraid?
Do you think that disaffection possibly plays against both parties? Because with the Conservatives, there'll be some people who, as you say, hold their nose, and they don't want to vote for Susan Hall because they don't want to vote for the Conservatives because they're angry at the Conservative Party. At the same time, you could have the Muslim vote not going out and voting for Sadiq Khan because they don't agree with Keir Starmer's position on Gaza, rather than...
Definitely has an effect.
So do you think that that's something that could make this extremely unpredictable?
I think it's unpredictable. I think it's very confusing. I don't think the politics is really... Nothing seems... obvious to vote for. I mean, you know, no one's really floating my boat, and I don't think anyone's floating anyone's boat.
I think it'd be so interesting to see, polling-wise, how many people decided on the day. Because there were so many people that were on their way to the polling station still unsure as to what they were going to do.
Are we being a bit London-centric, just focusing on Sadiq Khan and this race? I mean, one half of me thinks we are. We've got lots of viewers, of course, you know, in the North East, the North West, Wales and elsewhere, but... I then also think, but Sadiq Khan is the flag bearer of this ULEZ green, I call it a deranged march to net zero policy. And he travels the world, he travels to New York promoting it. And I think it is a national issue, really.
And we have seen in Oxford City Council, the actress Florence Pugh's father involved in this independent party that is anti-LTN. So do you think that the anti-ULEZ sentiment is something that could be playing out around the country in some of these councils, simply anti-policies that are like low-traffic neighbourhoods, green policies?
Is huge. Yeah. I mean, where was it we saw just outside of London that was expected to go Labour but it went Conservative because of that ULEZ issue? I think it is a big issue because so many people rely on their cars and so many people feel like London is already booby-trapped if you're a driver. You know, you take one wrong turn and you've got a massive fine. And I think people are sick of that. People are saying, look, I'm not trying to kill the planet. I just need to get from A to B. I need to drop the kids off. I've got to go to work. Stop stop bringing in this legislation. That's absolutely
they hate motorists. They do it down in Brighton. Years ago, they introduced 20-mile-an-hour zones, saying it would be a lot better for the environment, when in actual fact, when you drive at 20 miles an hour, you're in second gear and your revs are a lot higher, so that blew that myth out the window. But I just think London, as a blueprint for this green agenda, ULEZ has been introduced, of course, but next, Susan Hall and Conservatives would argue pay per mile, where they're charging drivers per mile driven, which is just outrageous.
And don't forget, ULEZ and those kind of legislations, they cut a lot deeper out of London. In London, arguably, you don't need to drive. You can get the tube, you can get the bus. It is possible to get there. But if you live somewhere rural or somewhere with a town that doesn't have a regular bus,
well,
you're done
it's
for.
like Havering. I mean, it's more Essex. People identify as more Essex.
Yeah.
And so people who are, say, you know, can't get an electric van because the thing would run out of charge because of the weight of the things they're carrying around, these things just don't work for them because they can't just hop on a bus or hop on the tube. They need to be able to use their cars in order to do their trade.
I think that we're getting to. I think fining people is not a good idea. I do think we should think about our green policies. I do want.
Are you pro net zero?
I am pro. Of course, I am.
Are you?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't want to destroy the planet. This planet is being destroyed. But I think I think punishing people is not the way forward. We want to inspire people. So, for example, marching and stopping the traffic, for the people that stop oil people that want to do the
So my
that's not a good
argument
idea.
to you, Esther, would be, yes, we should do as much as we can for the environment and the planet. But when China are building 2 coal power stations a week and our global emissions are less than 1%, what's the point of making ourselves poorer, colder, making our lives miserable when we're making no difference whatsoever?
Yeah, I agree with you there. Why make our lives miserable? I don't think we should make anybody's life miserable. I think we should all be inspiring people to do something about it. So we actually want to do something about the environment rather than be punished for it.
And also, don't forget, the richest 1% account for 66% of all emissions, so make it their problem, not regular working-class people.
With Just Stop Oil and things, they've really, in recent years, diluted the environmental argument, because there is a genuine argument about cleaning our waterways, making sure water companies don't pump sewage into the sea, making sure our rivers are clean, making sure the oceans are clean of plastic. They are genuine things that you should be fighting for.
Yes.
Yet they throw in the climate change debate. People say it's settled. I argue it's not.
And actually, the Conservative Party haven't made a very good case for conservative environmentalism because they have thrown themselves into the whole net zero, highly ideological
and it puts people off everything, all the other genuine environmental arguments.
I do think, going back to your question, Ben, of, are we focusing too much on London? If Sadiq Khan does lose, and ULEZ is seen to be a big part of why, I think that does then send a message to all of the other councils considering it, like, this is a vote loser. So there might be something we can glean from it if it is a loss.
But what a shame if a vote loser is because of that one issue. That would be a shame.
But I think it's where the ambition of wanting to do well for the planet then contradicts with people struggling to survive financially and bringing in more harm for them just getting about their everyday lives. I think that those two issues you need to be reckoned. I think everyone agrees we want a better, cleaner planet and we want to be doing good, but putting that on hard-working people that now cannot drive into London, it's a ridiculous thing.
It's anti-democratic that these things would be imposed on people. They wouldn't be able to then unseat those who had imposed these policies that have made their lives harder.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Talking about imposing policies, what about the policy of bringing ID to your polling station? who actually didn't take their own medicine?
Someone's just said on gbnews.com/you'll say, Ben, the plans for ULEZ were introduced by your beloved Boris. I don't know why you say he's my beloved.
Oh yeah, we know he's your beloved, Ben. Come on.
Boris went really off track with his dive into all the green stuff. He really went unconservative. But was it Boris who introduced the ULEZ? I think he kick-started it, wasn't it?
Well, and don't forget, some of this is the Conservative government as well, and Sadiq Khan just implementing what he's being told to do. It's not all his fault, but he is a bit too trigger-happy with it.
It's all a bit Carrie Johnson. Anyway.
Esther Lewis, thank you very much. Great start. Coming up, is it time to ditch the uni books and go along the apprenticeship route? Did you go to uni?
I did.
I didn't. So this is going to be a really interesting debate. Do you regret it?
No, I'm very pro apprenticeships, even though I went to university.
Yeah.
So I don't regret it, but pro-apprenticeships. I think you did the right thing.
Yeah, maybe. I was explaining my route to this job to Emma earlier, and it's very, very bizarre, to say the least.
We should definitely dig into that.
I'll get into that, yeah. So, yeah, more of that and lots more, including showbiz after the break and some sport. Arsenal were playing today, and I did manage to get a ticket in the end. Despite being scammed for 160 quid, I did manage to get a ticket. Stick with us. We'll be back after this short break.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
SUV drivers in Oxford will face higher parking charges. Proposals tabled by the local Green Party are passed by the City Council. The motion argues that heavier cars like SUVs cause more damage to roads, are more likely to seriously injure or kill pedestrians, and cause more illnesses due to pollution. However, the Alliance of British Drivers has condemned the plan as absolutely outrageous. Well, let's get the thoughts now of the legendary motoring journalist, Quentin Wilson. Quentin, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. We hear a lot about the war on motorists, this time targeting SUVs because of their weight, and the charges could be astronomical. This idea first started in Paris. Now it's coming to Oxford. Can you tell us a bit about how it would work?
OK, so the idea is that the charges will penalise people who drive heavier SUVs and I guess by implication electric cars, although Oxford Council haven't said exactly what they're going to do with EVs. But this is all based around this notion of SUVs being heavier than passenger cars, therefore wearing out the roads more. Now, there was a study, I've got it here in front of me, from the University of Edinburgh in 2022 that said real-world tests found that overwhelmingly the wear is caused by large vehicles, buses, heavy good vehicles. Road wear from cars and motorcycles is so low that this is immaterial. Now, obviously, driving around a medieval city like Oxford in an SUV isn't the brightest thing in the world to do. But the idea that we should penalise the owners of these cars based on imperfect science that's been read on social media, I think is completely wrong.
Now we're asking, is it time to ditch the uni books and go along the apprenticeship route instead?
Well, more and more young people certainly think so, with brand new data showing an enormous rise in those interested in learning on the job instead of learning about the job in a classroom.
But why this dramatic rise, and is university still worth the money?
Joining us now to discuss this is Kevin Osei, and founder and CEO of Bridging Barriers, and writer and commentator Tom Buick. Good morning to you both. Kevin, let's start with you. I guess you're going to be bigging up the apprenticeships. You're going to be telling people to get straight into work because it gives you, what, a head start against those who go to uni?
That's the reason why. But before we even begin, I want to discuss why it is that we're seeing a huge increase in the number of young people applying for apprenticeships. I think in the last year, there's been about a 60% increase in young people applying for apprenticeships. Now, traditionally, for young people, the main route to success was going to university. You did have the odd person here and there who didn't go to university, maybe started their own business and still achieved career success. Now, for young people who have access to social media and apps such as TikTok, they can see their peers who, a lot of them at a young age, have career success. And for a young person, you might compare yourself to somebody and you want that success at an early age. So I believe that an apprenticeship gives you the opportunity from a young age to get that real life experience, not be in any debt as well, and really build those key skills and set yourself up for career success.
So yeah, the debt is the key one there. So Emma, you were saying you're still paying off your student loan, right?
Yeah.
So Tom,
for the rest of my life, I will be.
is it not the case that people who choose to jump into apprenticeships and get real life work experience are going to be years and years ahead, both in experience and financially ahead of their peers who have gone to university?
Yeah, good morning. I think the key thing here is that we don't want to boil this debate down to an either or. The fact is, if you look at some of our most selective universities, only about 2% of students with good A-level grades who've had free school meals get into those universities. So there's still a challenge, actually, for those young people who do, who are bookish and want to go to university, who get great grades, often from working class backgrounds, they can't get into those institutions. So that's the social mobility point. I think Kevin's absolutely right. What we've got to do in this country, particularly with our productivity currently in the toilet, is really create these high quality pathways, what you might call learning and earning, right? We need those high level skills to meet that productivity gap. And degree apprenticeships actually are the way to go. There are 30,000 young people as we speak on those degree apprenticeships. The trouble is, for every one degree apprenticeship where you have a job, you're aligned with the university, 3 other students want that opportunity. And we haven't got the employers out there offering those places.
And Kevin, it's also about responsibility and maturity, isn't it? Because if you go straight from school into being in an environment with people who are older than you, more experienced than you, and you learn from them, then you're becoming an adult essentially sooner than if you were to go to university for 3 or 4 years, muck around and then struggle to then get into the real world when you're in your 20s.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you. And I think that's where the argument on university degree versus university experience does come in quite handy, because for some people, they feel like the degree isn't as worth it. However, being at university, having the opportunity to build life skills, especially if you're somebody who goes university away from home, you're living alone, you have the opportunity to join university societies and build those key skills that you can talk about in interviews with employers is obviously really valuable as well. So I think although degrees for certain industries might not be as worth it because of how competitive it is nowadays, the experience that you are able to get is really valuable.
And Tom, when I was growing up, going to university was a really privileged, special thing. If somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to university," as a kid, I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." But now everyone seems to go to university. Anyone can go and study any old degree. And I just wondered if you think too many people these days do go to university and get degrees that, they don't really need.
Well, on the point about 3-4 decades ago, you're right. I mean, less than 10% went to university. I'm the first person in my household generation to go to university. There'll be many people watching this who had that experience back in the 80s, back in the 90s. I don't think it's about us sending too many people to university. I think the real issue here is what we need for a lifetime of working, where people increasingly change jobs after a few years. Technology's coming in. People need to upskill and reskill. We need to ask the question, have we got a lifelong learning system in this country, which the universities are a part of that, right? As well as these degree apprenticeships and the role of employers. Is that working in the interests of individuals and the economy as a whole? And on the point about wages and earnings for graduates, yes, we do know that about a fifth of graduates are in non-graduate jobs, as it's described, 5 years after leaving university, but 4/5 are. And on average, a university graduate earns about £100,000 more over their working lifetime. So I just think we've got to be careful with this debate. Don't sort of boil it down to we've got to kick the ladder of opportunity away for those that want to go to university as a sort of false argument, really, with saying we just want people to get into work. What we need in this country is a really productive economy. That's why wages are stagnated, and that's why we're falling down the international leagues.
And Tom, very, very quickly, does this not the number of people going to universities who could be studying, say, law or certain medical-related subjects, they could be doing that in a practical context through apprenticeships. Doesn't this undermine the academic purposes of universities? Isn't this something that's playing into the crisis and commercialisation that we're seeing in universities more generally?
Well, those who go to medical school, they do get a huge amount of work experience. That's why we've got junior doctors working so many hours pulling in shifts, the NHS. We've now got law firms that are offering these degree apprenticeships. You don't have to go to university full time to be a lawyer. There are huge, well, there are over 600 standards for the apprenticeships. Many of them are now at degree level. So what I'd like to see really is us getting that balance, between learning and earning. That's what will really get this economy going.
Kevin, last word very quickly.
So the last words is university isn't for everyone. It's definitely a career, it's definitely an avenue that you should take if you feel like it's necessary for what you want to do in the future. However, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all, and you should definitely explore different routes that you can achieve career success.
OK, great stuff. Kevin Osei, founder and CEO of Bridging Barriers, and writer and commentator Tom Buick, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, in the last few minutes, Keir Starmer has been speaking at a rally in the East Midlands. Should we have a little listen what he had to say?
We got him there? I don't think we do.
Claire and the whole team here, this is a fantastic victory, a really important victory. You fought for this with a very, very positive campaign. I came here myself to campaign with you. I was struck by the positivity of the case that you were making, and you were rewarded with the trust and confidence of the voters in the East Midlands, a really, really important area for us. The underlying constituencies, the voters across the whole of the East Midlands came out and voted Labour, and that is a very significant moment in our history. And when the history books are written about this period of our political history in the United Kingdom, this will be part of that story. The day you are able to persuade people that we are a changed Labour Party with a positive plan to take to the country, and they can safely put their vote against the Labour cross. A very, very significant and important victory that vindicates the hard work of the last few years, changing the Labour Party, country first, party second, and being clear about the positive case that we make as we go forward. I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands, there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry. I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer. So this was a vote for Claire, it was a vote for the East Midlands, it was a vote for the country, it was a vote for change, and it now is upon us to deliver that change to each of those people that put their faith in us in the vote here in the East Midlands, and we will do so with a positive case for the country. We will pick up the NHS and put it back on its feet and give it a future. We will make sure that our streets are safe for all of our communities and our businesses. We will make sure that we're building houses that people can afford to live in across the country. We will make sure we've got those secure jobs for the future of generations to come. That falls to us, because today is the day that we celebrate the beginning of the turning of the page, one of the last milestones now as we go into that general election. So enjoy this moment. We have lots of work to do, but this is vindication of the hard work. Let's turn the page on decline and usher in national...
So Keir Starmer there saying that Labour will turn the page, Emma, on national decline. He did make a good point, which I have to agree with. How can you leave the country in a worse state than when you found it, talking about the Tories?
Yeah.
Arguably, the Tories had to deal with COVID, the Russia invasion of Ukraine. They were in a coalition for 3 or 4 of those years. I get it. But he's talking about rebuilding the NHS and rebuilding the country. But when you've got uncontrolled mass migration and you haven't got the facilities to support it, that's only going to get worse.
What ideas do they have to fix that? I mean, what ideas do they have to actually fix and reform the NHS? Do we really trust them to handle the border situation any better than the Conservatives have? So he does have a point in saying that, you know, in any criticism that you make of the Conservative Party, obviously is going to have a point. But when he says turn the page, I mean, it's so meaningless, isn't it? He's got this miraculous way of saying lots of words, but somehow it just washes over. In one ear and out the other.
I always think Sir Keir gets briefed with certain buzzwords every morning when he wakes up before he does the media rounds. They'll say, like, today's word of the day is this or this, because he'll say it all throughout the day. You watch later on, if Keir Starmer's back on any TV channels, he'll be saying, turning the page,
I think someone's paying it to him underneath his pillow while he sleeps, so it just slowly seeps in and then comes out of his mouth later in the day.
It is easy to shout from the sidelines and say what you do to fix things because you're not in power, but as soon as you get in power, and do you know what they'll do? As soon as they get in power, if and when that happens, they'll blame the fact they're not getting things done on the Tories. They'll say, we were left in such a mess that it's difficult to get things done.
What is so interesting is that obviously they're taking these local results as a harbinger of things to come with the general election, that there's going to be a Labour landslide. It's going to be like 1997. But also what's clear from these results is that the Labour Party is also riven by division. And as soon as they're in government, it's going to become more obvious where those various fault lines are. Whereas obviously it's very clear with the Conservatives because they have been in power for so long. But as we've seen with these results, and they're so unpredictable, and particularly the issues we've been seeing on the channel this morning about the Muslim vote and the effect of that on Labour in certain areas, and particularly we might see later here in London as well. I think it's very clear that actually that they're sort of slightly there's a slight veneer over the divisions that lie beneath the surface of the Labour
it's been a good couple of days for Labour, I guess, but there are some concerns there for them, as you said, the Muslim vote, and they need to resolve that pretty promptly.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in London.
Yeah, can't wait. What's the time? A couple of hours to go, 2 p.m. Darren Grimes will be with you revealing that result, but until then, we've got plenty more to come, including Prince Harry, who looks set to meet his father, King Charles, next week in London. We're going to have all your latest royal news in just a short tick. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
J.K. Rowling has accused politicians of snuggling up to trans campaigners. The Harry Potter author has called for an investigation into why political parties are embracing the language of pro-trans groups. So is it time to ditch campaign groups such as those? Well, welcome again to my clashers, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza, and also businessman and activist Adam Brooks.
I think the Cass report is really welcome. I think there's been a huge amount of agreement, including from some trans rights campaigners, that there's an awful lot of good in the Cass report. I think that I'm more concerned about mermaids, which is currently under a Charity Commission investigation, and some of the reports, if they're to be believed, like sending out chest binders, are more alarming. I think on Stonewall, which has done such great work over the past 30 years on LGBT rights.
It said 2-year-olds could be trans. Now, that is one of the most horrifying things I read today. Actually, J.K. Rowling tweeted that out there. To say that a 2-year-old can think that they can be another gender when my 4-year-old still thinks she's Elsa on some days. You know, there's no common sense, and to me it's
very badly phrased, Adam, I agree.
It's very sinister that these people actually believe that these kids want to change gender, and unfortunately out there are parents that almost see a trans kid as a fashion accessory now, and I think this whole agenda has pushed on people that this is normal to change gender, and we have to push back. And as I said earlier, to be trans is not normal.
Well, I don't agree with that phrasing. I think it's a big step, Adam, but there are clearly people throughout history who have been
But it's
trans.
not normal behaviour, is it?
I think as far as children are concerned, children need to be given the space to explore the world, and that can include experimenting with, breaking previous gender stereotypes. That doesn't mean that people should be sort of labelled at the age of 2, which I completely disagree with.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, don't forget to send your views into your views, GB News, your views.
gbnews.com/you'll say.
Still trying to learn what the new one is. And so we've got lots of emails coming in. Jason has got in contact with us saying that his youngest daughter dropped out of university when the fees kept going up and is now earning double the average wage in the training management of managers in nurseries and as a consultant.
Interesting. Martin says, it was Tony Blair's government that told all our youngsters they should be going to university instead of taking up apprenticeships. The entry requirements were dumbed down to let more go. And Dave says, good morning, Dave, I'm fed up of listening to your junk, Starmer. How about you tell us exactly what your policies are going to be and how you're going to pay for it? Sound bites is all you hear from him.
We've got one here also from Mike who says, university, most leave with a degree and work in McDonald's. Ask kids, what are you studying? Media studies or sociology? Joke degrees. Get them into the NHS, police services like it was back in the day.
Say what you really think, Mike. Don't sit on the fence.
Don't hold back.
Well, that's what I was saying as well. I've said it a few times on air in recent months. At my old newspaper, we had people coming in from university with degrees coming out their ears. They couldn't pick up the phone or knock on someone's door and ask basic questions. So I personally favour real-life experience.
I think if you go to university, you should go because you want to do something specific, like you want to study a certain academic subject in an academic context. You shouldn't be going to university just because you need it as a qualification to get a job. Most jobs shouldn't need a university.
Or just because you want to party every other weekend. Well, one man who was infamous for partying was Prince Harry, because he's back in the UK next week and he's set to meet his father, the King, as he jets in to attend an Invictus Games 10th anniversary event.
King Charles was recently cleared to resume public duties following cancer treatment.
So joining us now in the studio to reveal all the details on this mega reunion is royal reporter Sarah Louise Robertson. Sarah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What's going on then? This is it'll be only the first or second time Harry and the King have reunited since his cancer diagnosis.
That's correct, Ben. Yes, it's the second time that Prince Harry's set to meet with his father, King Charles. It will be a very short visit because obviously King Charles is very busy. Harry has a busy schedule himself. The last time he was here was in February when the King's cancer diagnosis was announced, and Harry only got to spend 30 minutes with him. That trip was
So will it be longer this time?
short. Well, I think Harry's hoping for a longer audience with his father, but it depends what's said between them. But I've been told that since February, Harry and his father have gone on to exchange lots of positive messages. There's been positive texts and contact between them, and Harry's built into his schedule that he has to have time with his father.
But no plans for Harry to visit Kate?
No, or William as well. The relationship between the three of them is still very, very fractured. William and Kate really don't want anything to do with the Sussexes as it stands at the moment because of the way that the Sussexes drag them so much.
So is that from Kate and William's side? Because I find it unbelievable Harry wouldn't visit his sister-in-law who's battling cancer.
Harry has tried to reach out and he does want to see them, but William and Kate have pulled up the drawbridge. They're just, until they get that apology, and I think because the trust, it's that issue of trust has been broken between the four of them, because whatever they say, they feel gets leaked out and twisted, and until that trust can be healed, Kate and William just have no desire to see Harry so far.
So long as Harry and Meghan are involving themselves with all these commercial things, as I think it was a podcasting Spotify...
well, we've got the Nigerian tour they're taking on.
Called them grifters, didn't he?
Yes, the Spotify boss, yes.
As long as they're doing that, you know, how is it possible for them to gain that trust back from from William and Kate?
Well, that's exactly it. I think what's happened is there's been so much division and poisonous rhetoric issued from the Sussex camp aimed towards Kate in particular. That's really where this vitriol's come from, the Sussexes towards Kate. Now, William is obviously very, very fiercely protective of his wife. Kate's going to be our future queen. He doesn't want to see his wife be dragged the way that she has been by them, with these disgusting slurs and accusations of racism and other things. So he's not going to back down from that. He wants to have an apology, and he wants to know that they're not going to behave like that again. But what we've seen with Harry and Meghan taking on this trip to Nigeria after Harry's been in London for the Invictus Games, it's the Sussexes themselves trying to present themselves as the alternative royal family. That's what they're trying to do. So they're just always trying to steal the limelight.
Meghan's planning on doing a kind of "who do you think you are?" She's going to go and
well, she did this with Malta. She stayed in Malta. She went to see the Marquis what was his name? Marquis, because I actually stayed at his house. Marquis de Piero, his wife Frances, at their beautiful house in Malta, in the capital. And when she was there, she dressed up in Maltese costume, which you can do that. But I remember when I was speaking to the Marquis, he was telling me that she had no interest in the British royal family at that time, because it was before she met Harry. All she wanted to know about was herself.
They want it all, don't they? They want the titles, they want the pomp and the ceremony, but they don't want to muck in and do the royal duties like the Wales.
The alternative royal family.
Sarah Louise Robertson, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Sorry, short and swift, but expert as always. Thank you. Right, coming up, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Should we sing that? I was thinking of singing it.
On your own.
Ain't no mountain high enough. Oh, there we go.
That's the third bad thing that's happened to you. Singing on air.
Don't clip that up and put it on YouTube, please. Our greatest Britain, he'll be joining us live in the studio after this short break. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News with Britain's news channel. Stick with us.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest Met Office weather forecast. A very mixed weekend, varying from place to place and from day to day as far as the weather's concerned. Yeah, there'll be some showery rain around, but there'll also be some warm, sunny spells. The best of the sunshine this morning, southern parts of England, South Wales and the northwest of Scotland. A fresh start, but with the sunshine, temperatures soon rising. Those temperatures, as they rise, could set off a few sharp showers in the southeast as well as for northern Scotland, but elsewhere a lot of cloud cover. Outbreaks of rain continuing for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, and feeling cool under that blanket of cloud, but warm in the sunny spells in the south and the northwest of Scotland. Eventually, through the evening, the cloud across central parts moves north into much of Scotland and continues to affect Northern Ireland and Northern England. Further south, some clear spells for a time, a few mist and fog patches developing by dawn, but thickening cloud arrives into the southwest corner and some outbreaks of rain for Cornwall. So we start off Sunday with best of the sunshine across the Midlands, Wales, East Anglia and the southeast. And that window of fine weather gradually moves north into parts of Northern England, perhaps Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But for much of Scotland, other parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England will see a few showers, whilst some more persistent rain begins to edge into the far south. Warm in any sunny spells, highs into the high teens.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're with Ben and Emma on Saturday Morning Live on GB News. Now, it's time for our Greatest Britain segment, because here on Saturday Morning Live, we want to give a spotlight to people who do amazing things. And this week, we're joined by the motivational speaker, entrepreneur and adaptive athlete, Jamie McCanch. Take a look at this.
What would you do if one day you woke up completely paralysed from the waist down? Would your life be over? Would you be a burden on society? How would your family cope? What would your life be like? It'd be over, right? Or would it? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And now I'm proud to say that I play basketball, I play rugby, I hand cycle, I've climbed mountains, I've jumped out of airplanes. Truth is, I've had a pretty epic life. And I've enjoyed every second of it. I've learned so much about myself and around the people around me. And now I want to share that journey with you so that you can go off and that you can achieve the things that you've always wanted to do effectively so that you can climb your mountain.
Brilliant. Amazing. Well, in August, Jamie will undertake the challenge of summiting Mount Kilimanjaro. It follows his groundbreaking 2022 climb to Everest Base Camp, where he made history as the first person with complex regional pain syndrome to achieve this feat using crutches.
Insane. I'm pleased to say you're with us now, Jamie. You are Greatest Britain this week.
Thank you.
Look, your story is incredible. I was reading about it earlier. You suddenly... Where should we start? Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah,
you
start
woke
at the
up.
beginning,
You woke up one day in 2014, paralysed, and you were completely fine before. What happened?
So I had shingles in the November, and I think it's really good to kind of make out that this is a very rare situation. All right, it doesn't happen. It won't happen to everybody. So I had shingles, which attacked my spinal column. And then I went to bed on the 6th of January 2014, had a massive spasm during my sleep, which ruptured my spine. And then I woke up on the 7th of January incompletely paralysed. So there was always an opportunity of me being able to walk again, but no one really knew what that would look like. It also took 13 months for complete diagnosis, which meant that there was no turning back after that. So I've got CRPS now in the L2, L1, L2, which affects all my lower limbs and lower organs.
So how did your life change from pre-incident to post?
Quite dramatically.
Completely on its head.
Yeah, I mean, look, I went down that whole journey of, mental health and well-being, and I was the guy that wore a mask, told everybody that I was okay when actually deep down I was falling apart. And then that stress led to a suicide attempt, and that was where my life really changed, was at that point. When I hit rock bottom. Once you're at the bottom, you can't go any further, right? So you can only go forward after that. That's when I found sport, that's when I found basketball, that's when I got into a network of people. And that's when things started building my confidence, and I just started getting better and better and better. Then I went to my physiotherapy, and I started all the hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, mental therapy. If there was a word and put word therapy at the end of it, I'd pretty much done it. And then, from there, I just progressed and got better and better and better. Started playing squash at Rabina Squash Club with an amazing guy called Richard Plenty, who has been an absolute inspiration for me. And he drove me every step of the way. He always nothing was ever too much trouble. And that just got me more and more confident. And then...
But you didn't just settle at squash and whatever else, did you? You set your eyes on Everest Base Camp.
So I've wanted to climb Everest since I was 7 years old. And
there you are on screen. If radio listeners are listening, and what's that? Is that the bridge to?
So that view, what everyone's looking at now, that's Hillary Bridge. That's the highest single-span suspension bridge in the world, and it spans at 429 feet, and it feels like you're going over the abyss. The wind is just like you just cannot believe it, but you've got to go over that to get up Everest. So
that alone would put me off.
Because you don't like heights, do you? So. It's a pretty epic experience.
So what's the preparation for this like? So for Everest Base Camp and then Mount Kilimanjaro?
Yeah, so Mount Kilimanjaro is harder than Everest Base Camp because you're going up into altitude at a lot quicker rate. For me, I did that on crutches. So I've been sponsored and supported by an organisation called Tuan, which is a French company, and they make composite carbon fibre CAFOs, which is basically, think of it like an external leg with a blade, like an Olympic blade, you know, a runner's blade, that goes down into the sole of my foot. And what that will do is it will then store the energy on my stepping forward and then release the energy on my stepping away. And how that will work is it will completely support my limbs with the addition of a back brace, which will then support my spine. And the idea of that is, or my challenge is to walk Kilimanjaro without the use of crutches. So I want to be able to do it without using crutches. And
completely unaided?
Yeah, so without, other than these legs. I mean, the team of Tuan have been brilliant. The legs are being made as we speak. Layers and layers of carbon fibre being put together, all for me. It's just...
So when are you tackling Kilimanjaro? When's the big day?
2nd of August.
This year?
This year.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What's
so it's
next?
all kind of
what comes after Kilimanjaro?
do you know what?
I just want to get that one out of the way first.
I don't know.
I mean, what's next?
I'm always up for doing something, and I'm always up for challenges, and because it keeps me going. And when I did Everest, Everest was about my journey from being paralysed to being able to walk, and that was my end goal. Kilimanjaro is a whole different ballgame. So I've started working with an organisation called the Youth Sports Trust. They're a national organisation, and their aim and target is to get young people back into activity. To get people, you know, the NHS say that young people should do 60 minutes of activity a day, and I think at the moment they're probably hitting a very small percentage of that.
60 even seems like quite a small amount of time.
So where can people donate to your Kilimanjaro fund or find out more?
So just get in touch with me.
Jamie McCanch.
Yeah, jamiemccanch.com.
MCANSH.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it might be on the screen, but yeah.
Well, Jamie, you are a real inspiration. As you said, for most people, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you, you know, find the inspiration and the motivation to you know, rise higher and rise from the ashes. So well done, you are gracious Britain, and best of luck for Kilimanjaro. Let us know what happens and send us some pictures.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Right. Lots more to come in the next hour, including the latest on the mayoral elections. Stick with us, we'll be back in just a tick.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello and a very good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo alongside Emma Webb, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Great to have your company this morning, and do we have an action-packed show coming up for you?
We do indeed. All the day's top stories with today broadcaster Esther Stanhope and writer and podcaster Lewis Oakley.
And Super Saturday with the results of the mayoral elections in the West Midlands, London and Greater Manchester, as well as other regions to be announced. We're asking if the Tories could pick up some momentum after the bleak set of results yesterday.
Yeah, it was a bruising couple of days, wasn't it? We'll also have the latest from the world of sports, including Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp hitting out at the lunchtime game slot, 12:30 kickoffs. Are they good for the game? Are they not? I'm off to the Arsenal game in a bit, so for me, they're perfect. And we are counting down the hours. 2 hours to go? 3 hours until the results of the London mayoral elections are announced.
We're going to find out whether or not the bloodbath is going to be consistent with the rest of the country.
Sadiq Khan, Susan Hall, who is going to win this race, which apparently, rumours suggest, is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. The polls weren't to be believed in the weeks running up to the election. And apparently, Susan Hall's got a big grapple on this race.
And particularly in London, it is wildly unpredictable because there are so many factors, ULEZ, turnout, issues to do with the Muslim vote over the situation in Gaza. So it really is all to play for. We have no idea what might happen, but we'll find out in a couple of hours with Darren Grimes.
And is it just a London-centric issue? We were discussing earlier with our panel. I don't think it is. I think Sadiq Khan is such a flag bearer of this green agenda, net zero, the rumoured pay-per-mile scheme that he's going to bring in, the war on motorists. Is it a blueprint for the rest of the country? Is the toppling of Sadiq Khan today potentially a cause for celebration for some in other areas of the country?
As we've seen in Oxford, there have been a number of seats won by a party that is pushing back against the low-traffic neighbourhoods. So it will be interesting to see whether this pushback against net zero is a sign of things to come at the general election, whether people are sick of net zero policies persecuting them and ruining their lives as drivers.
Well, we're less than 3 hours away. We're going to have all the best analysis in the next hour. Then Darren Grimes is with you for that big result. So stick with GB News today for that. But before we get stuck into anything else, here's your news with Ray.
Thanks, guys. Good morning. 2 minutes past 11, our top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister faces another challenging day after losing hundreds of councillors in the local elections. With 102 of 107 councils declared, the Conservatives have suffered huge losses, including control of 10 councils. Labour made major gains, with the Lib Dems and the Greens also doing well. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Celebrating a mayoral victory in the East Midlands, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the Tories' time is up.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry. I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Well, Andrew Griffith is Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology. He told us the public don't want Labour's policies.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult set of results. I think that was what was expected going in. There's going to be a very simple choice at the next election. Who walks through number 10 Downing Street? Is it Rishi Sunak with his plan that's starting to work now? Or is it Keir with no plan, or where they do have plans that don't really go with the grain of what the British people want?
As you've been hearing, the result of 7 mayoral contests will be announced today, including London and the West Midlands. The battle between London Mayor Sadiq Khan and Tory challenger Susan Hall is thought to be closer than expected. The count started at 9 a.m. this morning. We could have an indication who has won by early afternoon. Sir Keir Starmer has said he remains confident that Sadiq Khan can win a third term. Meanwhile, a narrow contest is also likely for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Liverpool City region, South Yorkshire and Salford will also declare today. We'll also hear results from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. Boris Johnson has thanked polling staff who refused to let him vote without ID. The former Prime Minister was turned away from a polling station on Thursday after he forgot valid identification. Writing in the Daily Mail, Mr Johnson said that 3 villagers were right to stick to the rules. The requirement to provide photo ID was introduced by Mr Johnson when he occupied number 10. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. 3 people have been charged after protesters blocked a coach taking asylum seekers to the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Met Police arrested 45 people after officers were called on Thursday morning to Peckham, south-east London. The demonstrators could be heard chanting, "No borders, no nations, stop deportations." 3 have now been charged with obstruction of the highway. Motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles will take to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean that local routes will see heavy traffic. Also, train strikes between this coming Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier. Fuel prices have gone up by an average of 10 pence per litre so far this year. New figures show that the typical price for a litre of petrol reached £1.50 in April, whilst diesel came close to £1.58. The rising prices have added around £5.50 to the cost of filling a typical family car. The RAC is calling on the Competition and Markets Authority to crack down on retailers over what they're calling unfair margins. And the King is set to become the patron of the Royal British Legion, a role that the late Queen held for more than 70 years. It follows a major review of more than 1,000 royal patronages following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Charles will now be supporting a further 200 organisations after that review. The decision comes as the Armed Forces charity prepares to mark the 80th anniversary of the Second World War D-Day landings on June the 6th. OK, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Ben and Emma.
Thank you, Ray. Now, there is only one place to start, and it is, of course, the election results. It was a bleak day for Sunak, but could the Tories see their fortunes turn around today with the mayoral election results being announced in London, Greater Manchester and the West Midlands? Let's pose that question to GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's outside of City Hall right now, and our reporter Jack Carson, who's up in Manchester. Thank you both. So, Olivia, let's start with you. Does it look like the tables may be turning with the chances of Susan Hall in the London mayoral elections?
Well, it looks like the result is going to be much, much closer than anyone was predicting a week or so ago. Just 10 days ago, Sadiq Khan was leading by about 20% in the polls, and the most recent poll, still he was leading by at least 10%. Now, though, it looks like everything could be changing. Why is that? Well, turnout is low. Turnout is around 40%. And Susan Hall's team for the Conservatives have said time and again that Susan Hall will do better with a lower turnout. And where the turnout is high and low matters too. In the donut area, as it's called, on the outer band of London, commuter towns like Bexley, Bromley, Dagenham, etc., those are areas which tend to sway Conservative. And those are areas where turnout has been a bit higher, over 40% in most of those places. Those are also areas which have been impacted by the ULEZ charge brought in by Sadiq Khan, something that Susan Hall has campaigned fiercely against. Meanwhile, the inner areas of London, places like Hammersmith, Camden, the City, have much lower turnout, in some areas as low as 19 or 20%. That is not looking good for Sadiq Khan. Ultimately, it's going to come down to these unknown factors which we just don't know what's going to happen until the result comes out at about 1:30. One of those is the Muslim vote. The Muslim vote is pretty big in London, and of course, Muslim voters are, on the whole, pretty annoyed with Keir Starmer's stance on Israel and Gaza. He has said that Israel has the right to defend itself. Sadiq Khan has taken a very different line. He's said that that Gaza should be freed immediately and there should be an instant ceasefire. But whether that will percolate through to voters remains unclear, and that's going to be a huge factor. Another factor is what happens to the Lib Dem vote. Traditionally, in London mayoral elections, Lib Dem voters will put the Lib Dem candidate first, and usually Sadiq Khan is the Labour candidate in second place. This time round, there are no second preference votes. It's all on first preference votes. What will the Lib Dems do? Will they put their candidate Rob Blackie in first place, or will they think that he has absolutely no chance at all and put Sadiq Khan in first place? That could make a huge difference to the result of the vote. If it is as close as people are predicting, or, shock, Susan Hall manages to scrape a win, there will be questions over whether Sadiq Khan was the right candidate in London. Here's what Keir Starmer had to say about that.
Sadiq Khan was absolutely the right candidate. He's got 2 terms of delivery behind him, and I'm confident that he's got another term of delivery in front of him. But look, if you look across the country, I'm standing here in Mansfield, in the East Midlands, where we've won a significant victory in the mayoralty here. But that's the pattern across the country. We've been winning in Blackpool in a by-election with a 26% swing. We've won in York and North Yorkshire, true blue Tory territory, and here in the East Midlands, where there are very many constituencies that matter hugely in that general election. So, all of this is done with a purpose. I want a Labour government to serve our country. This is effectively the last stop on the journey to the general election, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to show we're making progress, we've earned the trust and confidence of voters, and we are making progress towards that general election. So a very, very good set of results for us.
OK, well, all heating up in London. Thanks for that, Olivia. But, Jack, we've had an email from Jan who says, come on, Ben, I know you think the world ends at the M25, but here in Greater Manchester, we are under just as much threat. We have the biggest cuckoo in our nest with George Galloway. What's the latest for our friends in the North West?
Well, certainly here in Manchester, of course, the voters went to the polls on Thursday. Very much the feeling from the polling coming out of that Andy Burnham will secure his 3rd term as the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Of course, Olivia makes very good points around the impact of the Muslim vote in these big Labour areas, Manchester, of course, being one of them. Polls predicting a drop of maybe of 3% in support for Burnham at the outcome of this election, but still saying that he will hold on to that 3rd term in his rematch against Laura Evans, who of course was the same Conservative candidate who came second back in 2021. Burnham in 2021 got 67% of the vote, so could drop to around 63 or 64% because of, as you were saying, that split, and some people unhappy, particularly with their stance on the conflict between Israel and of course Hamas. Now, here in Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham focused a lot on public transport. That was a big part of his his manifesto as well to continue the expansion of his B network with buses and trams, particularly as well. He wants to create the UK's first housing first city region, give renters more control when they are dealing with landlords. But the opposition to much of his manifesto, trying to end rough sleeping, that's one of the Conservative candidates' big pledges, as well as, of course, trying to stop and take on some of the criminal gangs which do run around Manchester and the Greater Manchester Authority. But particularly as well, a lot of the candidates, most of the candidates, including Andy Burnham, committing to not bringing in a clean air zone within the city. That will please, of course, many people down, of course, as we were just mentioning, there in London. That was one of Sadiq Khan's policies, which hasn't gone down well in the outer areas. Andy Burnham and a lot of the other candidates committing to not doing that. Verification is underway here in Greater Manchester, but there are no shocks planned here later.
OK, Jack, thanks very much. And you, Olivia, thank you for your expert analysis. Two top reporters there out on the road. I hope, Jan, that satisfies your desire for some coverage in the northwest.
And we can talk more about Manchester now with our lovely panel.
Esther Stanhope, Lewis Oakley, welcome back.
Thank you.
Should we give politics a little bit of a rest?
Although I did just get I got a message from my friend. Hello, Ros. She said, I just want to let you know, Esther, that we did vote for the mayor. We voted for Count Binface. All of her and her friends have all voted. Actually, they said they didn't know who to vote for, so they voted.
When I went to Greater London to vote, there was, Count Binface posters everywhere, all over the high streets. It's interesting to see how many people of protest voted for Count Binface.
And on the ballot paper, there's a little picture of a bin. They've made it really easy for you to kind of identify it. And so each to their own.
That would be a plot twist. You never know.
Count Binface, please.
Bizarre things have happened. So, first story, what should we get stuck into? What about this apprenticeship? You had some thoughts on that, Esther?
Yeah, well, OK, so my daughter's about to go to uni, and the cost.
What's she studying, sorry?
She's going to be doing film and French.
OK.
Very
film
classic.
and French?
Yes.
Is that one
a combined degree? Yes, it's a combined degree.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, she's very artistic. But the thing is, right, it is so expensive. I mean, I've worked out she's probably going to be close to 100 grand in debt, really. So are you ever going to pay off the debt if you go to uni these days? Obviously, we are going to help to a certain extent.
Esther, I have to ask, are you happy with her decision? Have you not given her a nudge to say you could maybe, get into the workplace and earn 100 grand?
OK, so don't start an argument. My other half's going to have a right go at me after this, because he does think that university is a bit of a scam. And if you go into film or any sort of broadcasting like this, I'd like to know your story, really it's about vocational. You've got to do practical, you've got to do work experience, and apprenticeships are such a good idea. But I think we need to kind of...
Ben and I have completely different backgrounds.
Yes. Exactly.
Not very much difference.
I grew up in and out of prison and all sorts of that.
No, I went to uni, but I've really felt like I was behind by the time I started working. I've worked at the BBC, and in broadcasting, it was all about work experience, and it didn't really matter what degree you had. But I'm, as you can see, I went to uni quite a long time ago, so my student loan was very, very small, but I was still paying it off for years. What about you, Lewis?
Yeah, well, well, no, I'm still paying it every month now. I was the last generation to get it for £3 grand, and then it went up. So I was quite lucky. I mean, would I do it again now?
What about your kids?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but I just think, what is the point? Either of them at this point. You're going to get a job and still not be able to afford your bills and buy a house. I think it's so bleak now, the prospects for young people.
I also think there's another parameter to this, which is protecting your kids from just kind of, again, I hate the word woke, but, leftist indoctrination, because otherwise, if they're not in the real world speaking and meeting real people from all walks of life, they're just going to be cocooned in this university environment where they're getting, I would say these days, pounded with Marxist ideology.
Yeah, it's not healthy to be mollycoddled.
Well, that's about raising your kids to be able to be critical thinkers and be able to put them in university.
I like to think they do have a mind of their own.
Yeah,
and also, they can get a job. I mean, I think you have to work. If you go to uni, you need a job. We've already discussed this. My daughter is definitely going to work. Otherwise, there's no way she can afford
you'll be sending her a couple of $100 here.
No way.
I can't afford to buy any beans. Can I have some money? Transferring
What about this story to do with spring cleaning and sleep routines?
OK, now you picked up this story.
Yeah, no, this is great. So it's a great time now as the seasons are changing and it's getting lighter earlier to have a little think about how to jazz up your sleep routine. So some obvious ones in here: darken your room. That's a great one. I would say this is actually a hot tip. If you don't already have a fan, get a fan now, because what people do is they wait for there to be a heat wave, and then there's this mad rush for fans, and no one can get their hands on one. So we've got 2 fans up in the loft waiting for the heat wave. Changing your bedding.
Heat wave.
Do you know what? I think if you work in broadcasting, you know about funny hours, because, you know, before you work in an odd shift role, the only time you ever get up at 3 in the morning is probably when you get a flight.
Or breakfast. People who work on breakfast.
Yeah.
So the producers, the presenters, they get in at 3 in the morning.
Yeah,
the
so
show starts at
wake
6,
up at 1.
So I used to go to the BBC. I used to get up at 3:45 and get my car. So I became a sleep activist. So I worked out, and I did an experiment on myself. I can give you any tip. If you want to have good sleep, you can do an afternoon nap. A lot of people say, no, I feel groggy. Yeah, but you're not doing it properly, OK? So according to the author Daniel Pink, you can have a nappuccino, right? You drink coffee, you have a 29-minute nap, set your alarm, get up, and then the caffeine kicks in, and you feel like you've had great sleep.
I used to call them disco naps.
A nap puts me in such
dance?
a foul mood. There's no worse time to meet me than if I've accidentally had
how long is your
afternoon
nap?
I don't know. It could be any length.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, it's all about the length of the nap. So if you go an hour and a half, you'll be OK. But if it's under an hour and a half, but it's between an hour and a half, you'll be too sleepy.
Right.
So it's about the
I guess
length
it depends
of
where
the
you
nap.
nap as well. If you're napping on the pebbles of Brighton Beach, it's probably not going to be very comfortable.
Is that where you do the disco napping?
Exactly, yeah.
One thing that's not
I like the idea of your nap.
It's a bit more like being passed
Get refreshed
out.
for a big night out, why not?
One thing that's not in these sleep tips, though, which I've heard is really good, is having a dog. Apparently it goes back to caveman days of, like, you've got a beast there to kind of guard you and alert you to danger. And a lot of people I know that have dogs that allow them to sleep in the bedroom say that it's the best night's sleep they have.
Does a cat have the opposite?
Yeah, no, I've got a cat. My cat does sleep on me. My cat sleeps on the bed sometimes.
I'm just trying to get my 2 kids out of my bed.
Right. Talking of beasts, I'm only joking, but Prince Harry, he's back in London next week. Take that back, sorry.
Good segue.
Sorry, Duke. He's back in London next week. He's meeting his father, the King, for just the 2nd time since his father's cancer diagnosis. Harry's going to an Invictus Games gig at St Paul's on Wednesday, and his father is hosting a garden party at Buckingham Palace. Once they're all said and done, about 7 p.m, they are going to meet, apparently.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Crucially not the Princess of Wales.
Well, I think it's a wonderful story, and obviously you would. If you're visiting the country, you haven't seen your dad and he's ill with cancer, of course you'd go grab a Costa. I can't wait to see the pictures of them in Costa together, just having a little catch-up.
Do you think they might embrace?
I would hope so, but...
Do you know, I think it's really important that life's too short not to have a relationship with your family. I know too many people that aren't speaking, or they've fallen out because of money or whatever, and we're only on this earth for a very short time, and what a shame not to have a relationship with your own
haven't they?
son.
I mean, it's the trust issue that is really the problem here, and straight after this they're going to be heading off to Nigeria, and they're still involved in all of these sort of like commercial and media activities. If you don't have that trust there with your family, and you're responsible for breaking that trust down, it's not really, it's sort of on you, isn't it?
It's still mendable, though, I think, and we've all got people in our family that maybe we wouldn't trust with our bank details or something like that, so they can just not. You know, Charles shouldn't be going to Harry, guess what, you can't tell anyone. He's like, that's not what they're going to talk about, are they? They're not going to tell him anything.
The King is his father, but it's different, isn't it, if it's your brother, it's your sibling, whereas a father's probably perhaps more likely to be forgiving and to be wanting to sort of reunite. Do you think maybe it's going to be harder for him to mend that relationship with William and Catherine?
I think it's really, really hard. I mean, I can't see how but they need to get in a room together. They need to speak. The only way that you are going to break down barriers when it comes to relationships is by facing it and speaking about it.
You say life's too short, but some would say, well, that's a perfect reason not to tolerate any nonsense from people, especially a couple who have tried to destroy the monarchy and the future of the royal family.
I mean, look at Meghan as well. I mean, Meghan cut her own father off, so obviously she does take the approach of cut people off life if they're no use.
I don't really agree with that. I just think it's a shame. I just think, you know, why it's so stressful. When you have a family feud, I don't know whether you've ever had one, but if you've ever witnessed one or been involved with a family feud, I'm sure many people have, it's really, really stressful, and it makes everybody very, very unhappy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a bit happy-clappy here, right? But I do. Why make life stressful, unhappy?
Yeah.
You know, why continue it? Why continue this kind of like horrible cloud over your family, over your relationship?
All to cuddle and sing.
I want everyone to embrace.
I would say
sorry.
I don't know them personally, but I do think if they haven't come together now, and I'm talking about the brothers, when your dad is ill, your sister-in-law is ill. I mean, they've had a rough couple of years, losing the Queen and the Duke. So if this isn't going to do it, if you're not going to say, right, let's come together, let's forget about everything, if you're not going to do it now, I don't think it's going to happen. OK, Esther Lewis, thank you very much. You'll be back very shortly. Coming up, though, we're going to have all the latest from the world of sport. Does that excite you, get you going?
This is all on you,
All
Ben.
on me.
All on you.
You go and have a coffee. I'll do it alone. Stick with us.
A cappuccino.
Back in just a tick.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and re-incarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christys.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 11:27. You're with Ben and Emma on Saturday Morning Live. We're going to be going back to the local election results, the London mayoral race, of course, the results. Sadiq Khan, Susan Hall coming at 2 p.m, just a couple of hours over to go. Darren Grimes will have the results with you live, and we're going to get more analysis from Olivia and Jack as well. But first, something close to my heart, some sport, with Aidan McGee. Hello, Aidan.
Good to see you both.
So let's start with something that's really riled Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp. He's moaning and complaining about lunchtime kickoffs, which, for anyone who doesn't know, it's football matches that start at 12:30. There's an Arsenal game in an hour at 12:30 at the Emirates, Arsenal against Bournemouth. I'm going to that. What's his problem with lunchtime kickoffs? Is he just being a whinger?
Well, he's kind of earned the right to have a little bit of a whinge here because it's been on his mind for a long time. It's not the first time he's moaned about it. He doesn't have any skin in the game anymore, Emma, because he's leaving Liverpool. He's out of the place. He's won the Carabao Cup. He's out of the FA Cup. He's out of Europe. They're out of the Premier League race. So why not pontificate in the last few games of the season before he departs the set? And so he said that he called it, I think the back page of the Daily Star today was crime time television. He called it a crime against football. The fact that players are being forced to go through this routine of having to go to Italy to play, or somewhere around Europe to play a Champions League tie or another European tie, and then come back for the early slot on a Saturday. Surely they should be given an extra 24 hours grace. And Liverpool have had more 12:30 kickoffs than anywhere else, than anybody else this season.
Is it fair, or is it just a bit wussy? I mean, they're obviously...
Look, they get paid a fortune. They get paid a fortune. That's what we should say. And the money comes from the broadcasters. There's no question about that. And he's benefited more than most because he's one of the best paid managers in the world. However, there is science behind it, though, Emma. There is plenty of evidence that... See, if you watch players now, sometimes they'll take their shirt off at the end of a game. You'll see them wearing this, micro vest around their shoulders. That's a GPS tracker. It also gives you lots of other information, detailed analysis to physios, to sports scientists. All clubs have these, and they used to just use them in training. You can use them in real matches now. And that will give you live data on the touchline, which tells you when the player is in what's crucially known as the red zone. If they're in the red zone, they're more likely to get injured.
Aidan, I get that, right?
Yeah.
I play a lot of sport. I get sports science, but what difference is it going to make kicking off at 12:30 or 3 o'clock? 2 hours of extra recovery. It's going to be negligent.
Well, no, it's 20. But he's saying they should kick off a year.
He wants a Sunday kick-off.
Day. Yeah, he should. I think there is science behind that. But look, everyone has to. There's a compromise to be reached here, Emma, because he probably just feels that Liverpool have had too many of these 12:30 kickoffs. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer complained about it 2 seasons ago, I think it was. They played Everton away from home after European tie, and he said we've been set up to fail. And it always seems to be on BT, or now known as TNT, because they have that. They're the ones who use that 12:30 Saturday slot.
Well, is this point that it's holding Liverpool back in comparison to other clubs?
It looks like it because they've had more 12:30 kickoffs. Yeah, that's the genesis of what you're trying to say.
Your players are paid like 200, 300, 400k a week.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, but that's what if Jurgen Klopp was here now, and he would get quite animated about it. That's what he would say.
Also, it's a fans' game. I'm on Saturday 5 tonight, so I haven't got a lot of spare time today. But I will be lucky enough today to go and watch Arsenal play at the Emirates if I hot-foot it from Paddington now.
And so you benefit from the kickoff.
You're going to need one of those nappuccinos.
A couple of Red Bulls or a disco nap. Yeah. What else is going on, Aidan, in the world of sport?
Well, I think this story grabbed me yesterday about Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the Ineos guy who's gone into Man United a few months ago. He's bought the place. He's taken control of football matters, and he's done an audit of Old Trafford and the training ground at Carrington, just off the M60 there. Now, bear in mind, Old Trafford is the theatre of dreams. That's what it's been known as since the 60s, since the George Best, Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law era, and it's been falling into disrepair slightly over the last 3 or 4 years, certainly since Sir Alex Ferguson left in 2013, when overall standards at the club have declined. He did an audit in there this week, and he sent an email to hundreds of staff. Now, he must have known this was going to get leaked to the various media organisations, but he basically said, look, thanks for the welcome and everything, but I couldn't believe what I saw. The place is an absolute pigsty. He said that the standards in terms of cleanliness and tidiness were on the floor, and he said that I would expect... Well, we have higher standards at my petrochemicals firm, i.e. Ineos, than we have at Old Trafford or Carrington. It needs to improve. It's embarrassing when you're showing around potential players. I mean, honestly, it seems like basics. He said Manchester United is an elite organisation, and I've got a club. So I've got a club statement, not a club statement, actually. It's a headline in the paper. It says, a club with no standards will not succeed. So he's laying down a marker there to say, things are going to change around here. I'm just getting my feet in the door. I'm getting settled. But ultimately, standards down here have declined, and I'm the man to sort it out.
Aidan, I read that the entire entire Manchester United squad is up for sale. Is that right?
I wouldn't say that. No, there are some quality players under contract who will stay. But yeah, there needs to be an overhaul. There's no question about it. Something has to be done about Marcus Rashford. There are huge questions over the goalkeeper. Anani was signed for a record fee last summer for a goalkeeper, but he just simply not performed. There is loads and loads to do. But if you look at your own club, Arsenal, they were in a similar state of disrepair maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's not a short-term turnaround, is it?
How would you describe Arsenal now, Aidan?
I think I'm surprised at how far they've come. I think they're outstanding. I think they deserve to win the league if they get the points, obviously, but they've still got some work to do because Manchester City are a juggernaut.
All right, in one answer, who's going to win the league?
I think Man City will hold on. I can't see them losing, Ben. Sorry. Ipswich can get promoted today, by the way, and from the Championship to the Premier League. Great for the town if that happens. They need 1 point against Huddersfield.
It'll be their first return in 22 years?
2 years. 2002, I was there. I covered them. Blimey.
Ipswich
my age away.
Good luck to you. Who are they playing?
They're playing Huddersfield at home. Huddersfield are all but relegated, not mathematically, but they need a massive goal turnaround.
All right, Aidan, great stuff. Thanks
Good to see you both.
Let's get your news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, guys. 33 minutes past 11, our top stories. The Prime Minister faces another challenging day after losing hundreds of councillors in the local elections. With 102 of 107 councils declared, the Conservatives have suffered huge losses, including control of 10 councils. Labour made major gains, with the Lib Dems and the Greens also doing well. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Sir Keir Starmer says he remains confident that Sadiq Khan could win a third term. That's as the battle between the current Mayor of London and Tory challenger Susan Hall appears to be closer than expected. The count started at 9 a.m. this morning, and we could have an indication of who's won by early afternoon. In total, results of 7 mayoral contests will be announced today. A narrow result is also likely for Tory Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Liverpool City region, South Yorkshire and Salford will also declare. We'll also hear results from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and part of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. And motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles will take to the road today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean that local routes will see heavy traffic. Also, train strikes between Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I have to say, the jam issue is
It's all very WI, isn't it?
Well, it's ridiculous. Now there's a picture of a friend of hers who's lying on the grass, cuddling a bowl in which the jam is placed in the middle with lemons round it, and a dog lying next to her. So she's holding this as if it's someone else that she really loves. I think, well, Meghan would have organised that because she'd have given her the present. I think this is too far. I mean, it's jam.
It's stupid as well.
Yes.
I mean, if any of us were to bring out a product, Isabel, I might associate with jam. No, I could see, I could see how that would
Sticky
work.
jam.
Yeah, but Meghan Markle, why?
Well, what was her website called? Twiggy or Tiggy?
No,
or
I've got it down because I can't remember. America. Oh, Tig, the Tig.
Tig. She used to be quite, a lifestyle guru pre-Harry. So she's trying to go back to look at what I'm wearing, look at what I'm eating. I can get everybody to buy my product.
And what the chickens should have in my garden.
Do you actually think jam crosses her lips?
No, of course, way too much sugar
but
in
they
there.
also say it comes from her garden. I mean, how many strawberries has she got? Does it mean 50 people, that's only enough for them? It's not going to have thousands of people asking for jam. We won't have it. And there is a thing that she was cross that, she said, jealousy, really, that King Charles brings in all the the food and the jam, things to make from somewhere else. He doesn't do it himself or get his staff to do it. But he gives it all the money to charity, right?
Yes, yes.
All this money is for Meghan, and it's sold out. People have thought, well, actually, if we are going to get jam, if that's what's trendy, let's get it from the king, not from Meghan.
Not her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Day in the local election results, and of course this result in London with Sadiq Khan against Susan Hall for the morality. Let's get the latest now from GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's outside City Hall, and reporter Jack Carson, who's in Manchester. Olivia, what's the latest?
Well, it is looking closer than was being predicted a couple of weeks ago. Turnout is low, something which is very much in Susan Hall's favour. And it looks like turnout has been particularly low in those inner London areas which tend to be more Labour friendly. In the outer areas, places like Bexley, Bromley, Dagenham, places which have been heavily affected by the ULEZ charge imposed by Sadiq Khan, turnout is a little bit higher, just over 40%. And those are areas which very much favour the Conservatives. Of course, if it does turn out to be a really, really close result, there'll be questions on both sides about the choice of candidate. If Sadiq Khan just narrowly wins to Susan Hall, there will be Conservatives asking if they should have chosen a stronger candidate. Susan Hall is popular among her base. She has a very loyal, very supportive base, but some have argued that her campaign has been gaffe-prone. Sadiq Khan, meanwhile, is unpopular in huge swathes of London because of the introduction of ULEZ. This is what Keir Starmer had to say.
Sadiq Khan was absolutely the right candidate. He's got 2 terms of delivery behind him, and I'm confident that he's got another term of delivery in front of him. But look, if you look across the country, I'm standing here in Mansfield, in the East Midlands, where we've won a significant victory in the mayoralty here. But that's the pattern across the country. We've been winning in Blackpool in a by-election with a 26% swing. We've won in York and North Yorkshire, true blue Tory territory, and here in the East Midlands, where there are very many constituencies that matter hugely in that general election. So, all of this is done with a purpose. I want a Labour government to serve our country. This is effectively the last stop on the journey to the general election, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to show we're making progress, we've earned the trust and confidence of voters, and we are making progress towards that general election. So a very, very good set of results for us.
Now, Jack, we've just heard from Keir Starmer there. What's the latest up in Manchester? Is it looking like a Labour landslide?
Well, definitely, I think so. That's the feeling, certainly, from the polls that have come out since election day. We think that Andy Burnham might lose a few percentage points in his race to try and win a 3rd term as Mayor of Greater Manchester. But as a mayor, he's very, very popular within this authority in this voting area. Look, back in 2021 at the last election, he got 67% of the vote, beat 2nd place by 300,000 votes. Turnout in this election generally low, only around 30%. 35% last time out. We're awaiting to hear what the turnout was this year. Verification and adjudication of the ballot papers still underway behind me, but we are still expecting Andy Burnham to come away with a win today and win his third term. His personal approval rating is around 31%. That's a lot higher than many national politicians. Of course, he stepped away from Westminster as an MP to become the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He has delivered on many of his promises as well, which has impressed voters. Of course, bringing back the bus network and bringing public transportation back into public ownership, a scheme which is plans which are copied in many manifestos for other Labour mayors around the regions, particularly down in the West Midlands, with Richard Parker trying to follow on from the scheme that the likes of Andy Burnham, of course, has brought in here in Manchester with the B network. His plans want to try and expand that. Now, of course, he hasn't maybe achieved all of his targets over his 2 terms as mayor so far. Still trying to deal with an issue of homelessness in this city, but he wants to try and improve that. That's one of his big manifesto points for Manchester, to be the first in the UK to be a housing first city, copying schemes as such that have been used in Finland. That's one of the criticisms and his improvement in housing that's come from other candidates, but he is still expected to hold on here when we get those results a little bit later this afternoon.
Gosh, well, it's all happening. Thank you so much, Jack Carson and Olivia Utley there. Now, we have Darren Grimes here in the studio with us. He's going to tell us about what's coming up on his show.
Darren, you have, sorry to interject before you've even started, you have the best job of the day, delivering the result between Sadiq Khan and Susan Hall in London.
So jealous.
If we get it by then, right, it could be slightly delayed. We don't know what's going to go on behind the scenes. So they're saying any time after 1:30, really, they'll know. And we'll be on course to actually, you know, deliver that verdict, whatever the public have decided. But it's going to be a really interesting one. I mean, the show itself will be focusing on the rise of religious sectarianism as well in this country, where actually people are voting along religious divides now. And you mentioned Manchester just in that piece with Jack there, and actually in parts of the northwest.
Oldham.
Yeah, they're going. George Galloway's party are going hell for leather against Labour around the issue of Gaza itself. Now, the viewers, I'm sure you've seen in the Your Say inbox there, viewers are actually not celebrating the fact, put it this way, and that's putting it mildly, that we are entering an era of religious sectarianism, and the divisiveness, the divisive nature of that and what it means for British politics.
Now, these elections feel very different, don't they, to any previous election? So many extra factors that making it very unpredictable to call the outcome.
Exactly, and, you know, that could be why Susan Hall, who was not in any way, shape or form meant to be in the running, could have clinched it, because voters may have said to Sadiq Khan, I ain't voting Labour because of their stance on Gaza.
Well, even in your neck of the woods, Darren, up in the northeast, loads of Green councillors won swathes of seats because apparently, you might know more than me, there's big issues with refuse and recycling and so on. And same as me down in West Sussex, a local Green councillor won a stonking majority because we're all a bunch of NIMBYs, and he was promising to stop some housing development. But with Susan Hall, are Sadiq Khan's critics going to be having a wild night of celebrations tonight if he loses?
Oh, it'll be off the scale. This would be the biggest polling upset since Brexit.
Yeah.
It would be seismic. So make no mistake, you know, this would be the end of days for most people in the Labour Party.
And tell you what,
we did see, didn't we, that in Tees Council that they had a surprise Conservative hold there.
Yeah. But, I mean, Ben Houchen had a sort of Putin-esque majority, right? This was Banana Republic territory, how big his majority was. But now, this time around, he has lost, what, 20 points in the at the ballot box. But he held on. He wasn't expected to hold on. And that's the force of personality, and actually many in Tees Valley themselves would argue the force of delivery.
Right, so you've got the best job of the day delivering that London result, potentially, and you're also on Saturday 5 tonight.
Absolutely, 6 o'clock. We're going to be scrutinising all of the things that we've just mentioned. We'll be having a ding-dong. I'm sure Benjamin Butterworth's got some things to say about what's happening in London. And we've got Fleur coming in, who was a newbie for the Saturday 5, but she's great. She's a host of the Blonde Bombshell podcast.
Sounds good
to me. So, yeah, look forward to that one.
6 till 8.
6 till 8.
So it's you, me, Benjamin, Fleur, Albie?
That's it.
All the band.
Absolutely.
Great. Good stuff.
All the lads.
All the
except
lads.
me.
All the lads.
And a lass.
You come back next week. Right, thanks, Dan.
Lads is a gender-neutral term, Darren.
Yes, adhere to that. Still to come, we're going to be getting all of your views on the London mayoral race. As we just said, Darren's going to deliver that massive news in just a sec. But yeah, more still to come just after the break. Stick with us.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest Met Office weather forecast. A very mixed weekend, varying from place to place and from day to day as far as the weather's concerned. Yeah, there'll be some showery rain around, but there'll also be some warm, sunny spells. The best of the sunshine this morning, southern parts of England, South Wales and the northwest of Scotland. A fresh start, but with the sunshine, temperatures soon rising. Those temperatures as they rise could set off a few sharp showers in the southeast as well as for northern Scotland, but elsewhere a lot of cloud cover. Outbreaks of rain continuing for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, and feeling cool under that blanket of cloud, but warm in the sunny spells in the south and the northwest of Scotland. Eventually, through the evening, the cloud across central parts moves north into much of Scotland and continues to affect Northern Ireland and Northern England. Further south, some clear spells for a time, a few mist and fog patches developing by dawn, but thickening cloud arrives into the southwest corner and some outbreaks of rain for Cornwall. So we start off Sunday with the best of the sunshine across the Midlands, Wales, East Anglia and the southeast, and that window of fine weather gradually moves north into parts of Northern England, perhaps Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But for much of Scotland, other parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England will see a few showers, whilst some more persistent rain begins to edge into the far south. Warm in any sunny spells, highs into the high teens.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, We've only got 10 minutes to go almost. You are watching Saturday Morning Live with Emma and Ben. And now there are over 100,000 children and young people living with epilepsy in the UK, and with over 40 different types of seizures. For many, the condition can be frightening and isolating.
Yeah, so our next guest, Chris McCarthy, he was diagnosed with epilepsy himself at just 17 years old, and although it ended his dreams of becoming, no less, a Formula One driver, his determination to get to the paddock led him to becoming a Formula One, Formula 2, Formula 3 commentator. He also works with national charity Young Epilepsy to help raise awareness in the sport and beyond.
Now, we're delighted to say that we are joined by Chris now. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your story. Let's start from the beginning. You were racing in go-karts, as lots of Formula One drivers start out doing, whizzing around the track. Yeah. And you got to 17 years old. What happened?
Yes, so
like all young drivers, starting out in karting, my dream was to become a Formula 1 driver. But at 17, I was on the point of looking to get into single-seater racing. And then, unfortunately, at that point, I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was at a racetrack, trackside. Unfortunately, I woke up in the back of an ambulance and being told at that point, when you have a seizure, you're told at that point that, of course, you can't drive on the road for a year, but then you can't drive on a racetrack for 5 years.
So you've never had epilepsy before? You've never had a seizure before? Just came out of the blue completely?
No, I wasn't officially diagnosed until 3 years later. But at that point, you're told that that's 5 years. Unfortunately, my race licence was taken away from me. So my dreams then of making it to a high level of racing were brought to a pretty abrupt end, unfortunately.
How did you deal with that emotionally? Did it take you long to accept?
It did. Yeah, it did. I just started doing college at the time, doing TV and film. That was the industry I wanted to go and work into, but I wasn't probably the best person to be around as I started college shortly afterwards. But I had to, when I came back to the track the next month, to thank the medical staff and see my former teammates and the rest of the paddock. I had to decide, when I left the paddock after that, I realised that might be the last time I ever leave a race paddock. So I had to make a pretty quick decision. If I want to stay in the paddock, how do I do that? I was no good with using tools. Mechanic and engineering wasn't really going to be my thing. I tried to get into engineering and it didn't work. So I just came up with this idea. Why don't I film the races that I was once racing in? They'd never been filmed before. I had all this access to this equipment, these cameras and these edit suites. I was doing TV and film. We'd been set a task of filming a live production as our end-of-year college project, and so that's what I did. I grabbed a load of my college mates and a load of cameras and spoke to the championship that I raced in, and we went down and started filming some races.
And is that how you ended up getting into commentating?
Yes, precisely. We filmed about 5 races, and the championship loved it. They hired us to do the whole of what was then the 2013 season. And my father said to me, "Look, it's great. It just needs some commentary over the top of it." And I was actually going to go and hire someone to do that. But my dad said, "Why don't you just give it a go? You're filming it. It'll make it so much easier. You know all the drivers." And so that's what I did. I did it in my front room for the first time. It took about 4 or 5 takes the first time I did it. And
there you are on the screen. For radio listeners, it's Chris there with his headphones on, his microphone, and you've got the big Formula 1 Kids logo in the background. What is F1 Kids? That's what you commentate on alongside Formula 2, Formula 3. What is F1 Kids?
Yeah, so that's basically what I did now. It started, like, as I said, commentating in my front room, but 10 years later, I now commentate on F1 Kids, which is essentially an alternative commentary to when you are watching Formula 1. You have the option to watch Formula 1, but for a kids broadcast as well, which is myself hosting, and then we have 3 very talented young presenters and commentators who come in and do the commentary alongside me, and they do an incredible job, I have to say.
So you do a lot of work with young people. Tell us more about Young Epilepsy.
Yes, so Young Epilepsy is the only charity in the country for epilepsy working with young people currently, and they are currently launching a petition, actually, trying to help raise awareness and help young people in schools to get the support that they need, because every single young person, their epilepsy is unique to them, and currently 1 in 3 children aren't getting are reporting that they aren't getting the support that they need in school.
Well, you said it took 3 years to diagnose you. Is that one of the sort of challenges that people face? There are all these different types of epilepsy, and actually getting the diagnosis is quite difficult.
Yes, precisely, and it's different to every single person. It's not just having that seizure, which you would recognise. It's the medication that comes with it, then the side effects of the medication that comes with it. Then it's the social aspect of it as well. I didn't really want to go and report that I had epilepsy when I first started working in the industry, because I thought it was going to hold me back. I didn't then want to. It's a social aspect as well. You don't really want to tell other people that you have it, because you think it's constantly going to hold you back in life, when really it's the complete opposite. Once you're open and aware about it, people are very, very accepting of it, very supportive of it, and then you can get all the support that you need. And Young Epilepsy are currently working with young people, and particularly young people in schools and parents with kids in young schools, to really help them get the support they need in school, to make sure they have that support so that they're not held back.
Well, Chris, that you're an inspiration, and thank you for coming in and sharing your story. It's incredible.
Thank you very
much.
much.
I'm going to get my two young boys to tune into F1 Kids, because we watch the normal F1 at the moment, but he looks out for Max Verstappen. He's like, "Where's Max? Where's Max?" But he doesn't quite understand, the commentary and so on. So I'll definitely get them to tune into you. Chris McCarthy, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Right, shall we get stuck into some of our views before we hand over to Darren Grimes for the big afternoon show where we're going to have the result, potentially, of the London mayoral race. Peter, you say, who would replace Rishi Sunak? They are all a bunch of idiots. Our fiscal system's broken and has been for some time. MPs have forgotten why they're there and who they represent.
Sheila says the Conservatives will be obliterated under Sunak. I think she's right. At least with a different leader, it would be a more respectable loss. Do you think so?
Probably.
More respectable.
And James says, Ben's gone way down in my estimation being a Arsenal fan, a gooner. Well, we're not all perfect, are we? Talking on that note, I'm off to the Emirates now. Thank you for joining us. Emma, thank you for being with us. And Darren Grimes is next. Have a fantastic weekend.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and a very warm welcome to GB News Saturday. I'm Darren Grimes, and for the next 3 hours, I'll be keeping you company on TV, online and on digital radio. This show will keep you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Coming up this hour, are we about to see one of the biggest shocks in British political history?